I got a problem with the people that masquerade as kumbaya, super black, all for the people, and I'll be the first one to tell you how we're different. But I'm not going to keep listening to people who in 25 years I've never said the name Angela Rye.
This moment right here might be the most brutally honest and important clapback Joe Budden's ever had on his podcast. All this sparks from a disagreement Mark Lamont Hill had with Queen's Flip on the Joe Budden podcast.
But that's why you saying that?
Because when you say that second, I take that as disrespectful. Dude,
I'm afraid.
so at the end of the day, I'm not you. So what you doing? Then I'm leaving you alone.
All right.
No,
I'm scared.
The clips have gone viral. Somehow this got the attention of Tiffany Cross and Angela Rye at the Native Land Pod, and they expressed their views on this. But unfortunately, they're just woefully misinformed as usual. Joe Budden caught wind of this pushback from Angela Rye and Tiffany Cross, and he had a few choice words for them. And only the way Joe Budden can air somebody out.
You quote-unquote intellectuals seem to be pulling a lot from places that, again, like it said, you admittedly know very little about. It just comes off away.
Yeah,
it comes off away.
It's like if you put,
especially when you pretending to especially when you pretending to do all of this super black kumbaya. I got a problem with that too. I got a problem with the people that masquerade as kumbaya, super black, all for the people, and I'll be the first one to tell you how we're different. I come on here every week and say we're less different than we are alike. We just got different ideologies. But I'm not going to keep listening to people who in 25 years I've never said the name Angela Rye. I don't give a fuck about nothing y'all talking about over there. I'm saying that respectfully. I don't come on here and say a word about any of that shit. I expect reciprocity. You could have titled that clip totally different.
That's true.
Don't claim to be super pro-black and then take the #1 black urban podcast and put that type of stink on it because you think you got a friend over here. That don't give you a license.
I don't think it's that. I don't think if Mark was here or not, I think
if Mark was here, they would never have those conversations.
No,
they having those conversations because their friend is up here.
No, they having those conversations because Mark is deemed an academic and an intellectual, which you.
Well, he is not deemed.
No, I said what you are. So now it's why is he even there? Like Angela Yee said, Mark, just come home.
Angela Rye.
Pardon me. Angela Rye said, Mark, just come home.
That's the other beef.
But then you go on to say how diverse Mark is. So I think that that's an insult because you don't put Mark in a box. Mark is home. Mark is a black man sitting in a room with black men that grew up in similar circumstances, albeit we wasn't all in the cold. You can't say he's not home. We all had
our own walks of life.
Yeah, dog. Like I just disagree with that.
And thank God there was a black-owned, independent media company there to pick up our good brother when he was misunderstood by other outlets.
Talk about it.
Why is that part not being said by pro-black native land people? I'm getting confused.
Yeah.
Mark was a free agent. Y'all had a chance to bring him home.
And didn't.
You didn't.
That's a good point.
So don't sit up on your platforms all pretentious as one of the Charlemites. That's how I know you. I know you as one of the Charlemites and get to saying what Mark should and shouldn't be doing. Please. If you didn't discuss this podcast before, if by your own admittance you know very little about it, the woman Tiffany said at least 5 times that she don't give a fuck about these other opinions. All I'm asking is that you act like it.
Let me give you a little backstory on this.
Of course, of our friend and brother, Mark Lamont Hill. This happened on the Joe Budden broadcast this week. First of all, I thought Mark Lamont Hill handled himself so incredibly well, sitting across from a full-blown temper tantrum from a grown man. And I think it's important for our viewers, if you don't know about Mark Lamont Hill, he is a luminary. He is an incredible intellectual who hosts an amazing show on Al Jazeera called Upfront. He hosted on Al Jazeera English. One of his interviews went viral during post-October 7th, where he got the former Israeli Deputy Minister, Danny Ayalon, to admit, to concede that the response to Palestinians in Gaza was, in fact, collective punishment. He owns a bookstore. He's an amazing writer. He's a professor. He was unfortunately dismissed from CNN because he said from the river to the sea while speaking at the UN. If you're like me, you might genuinely wonder, why is that considered anti-Semitic? Some people of the community consider it so because Hamas used this phrase in 2017, and some members of the Jewish community thinks the phrase suggests that it's a Palestinian militant group and only used in that perspective that suggests that Israel does not have the right to exist. Mark Lamont Hill has been incredibly clear that he does not believe that. It was a call for justice, and he made the reference when he was addressing the UN, and he was just supporting Palestinian freedom, which of course I certainly do as well.
And that's at the core of this argument, because Mark Lamont Hill has been excommunicated, as well as most of the members of the Native Land Pod, from mainstream media for the controversial take that he took on this phrase. And that's a very important point that can't be missed, because Joe Budden, in his highly performing podcast, has offered Mark Lamont Hill a place to get his message across, even despite that. Angela Rye and Tiffany Cross, their platform is nowhere near the size of Joe Budden's platform. And therefore, how about a little respect for what Joe Budden has built here, instead of mouthing off about how lowbrow you think the podcast is?
There seems to be the death of Black intellectualism, particularly when it comes to who has a microphone. And viral clips like this take up so much space. To me, it was clear that his co-host felt small. And, even him saying you use tricky words and Mark responding with, I use words that are tricky to you. And anytime somebody, I think, cannot take to be questioned or responds with a full temper tantrum, it is always about that other person, not about, it wasn't Mark. He didn't do anything. And if someone is so small that you can't articulate your point without throwing a temper tantrum or insulting another person, I'm happy that Mark showed both sides. That yes, I'm an intellectual, but don't get up in the studio, And I think it's important for people to see that yes, you can still be an intellectual and demand your respect. That doesn't make you soft.
Which, make no mistake about it, Queen's Flip was well within his rights to be insulted by the statement that Mark had made. This is a little context that Tiffany and Angela Rye seem to miss. In their disregarding of this podcast, they don't realize that this has been an ongoing discussion with Mark Lamont Hill. Mark Lamont Hill has been using his well-earned education on the Joe Budden podcast to poke and prod at all of his cast members on that show. That is important context that can't be missed in this. Could it be content over everything? Could it be that maybe he's just trying to make it a more interesting watching experience? Is he trying to bring some drama to justify his hefty paycheck? The paycheck that you all can't offer him on your show, right?
There seems to be an erosion. I don't consider myself a member of the Black intellectual class, but I do thrive in that space. I love to be around. Sometimes, Andrew, when you're talking, I forget I'm a host on the podcast. I'm just listening to you because you're saying something so brilliant to me or something that I didn't know. I had no perspective, and I enjoy hearing that. I have curiosity. I'm not trying to be fake humble. I don't consider myself an intellectual. I consider myself intellectually curious. I have questions. I see that getting dulled across peers and across the community.
And maybe that's why she makes such an ignorant statement here, because intellect, as Queen's Flip actually pointed out, doesn't have to punch down.
And I've been seeing this, people saying that you shouldn't argue with me because I'm dumb, right? In their opinion. But a lot of people move with that intellectual arrogance. And intellect doesn't make you superior. And that's not supposed to be used as a weapon. Intellect is supposed to be used as a bridge. You know what I'm saying? To connect, to encourage, and to motivate me to be an intellectual or to go over there and study and do that.
It doesn't have to embarrass or poke and prod at people that could be viewed as less intellectual. And with you not being an intellectual, Tiffany, admittedly so, you have to understand that certain things are not supposed to be done. You're not supposed to set yourself up as an elitist outlier to the Black community. And that is the core of my issue with how they have responded here.
I heard Tiff at the outset say that she thought that Mark handled himself well in the exchange. And I can't tell you all how much I cringe looking at that exchange. I have been in conversation, in relationship with people that take you completely off of your square and who you are, who you have evolved out of. And I think for me, what's frustrating, and this is something that I would tell our friend as well, is I never want anybody to take any of us off of our square, but particularly not him. He just has so much to the world. Now, so much to add to the world. Now, I'll say I'm the first to call myself sophistiratchet all day long. All day long. I believe in, both sides. Like depending on the mood, you might, if I'm feeling froggy, I might leap. But what I don't like is I know firsthand that the founder of Uncle Bobby's, that's striving to ensure that Black folks can read in a neighborhood that he loves in Philly, the same person that's creating Black jobs and providing opportunity for our folks, doesn't want to show up that way for himself, for his family, for his kids, for anybody. And so what I really want to ask us to consider is, how do we resolve conflict when things are heated without name calling? Without attacking someone's intellect or lack thereof. I think that we can lovingly challenge people to rise up without calling them dumb or anti-intellectual. Sure, that is where we are, but is there another way to call people in? I don't think that Mark should be left holding the bag in this exchange. I take great issue with that podcast and its treatment of Mark, and I was wondering when he was gonna snap. There's another clip that I don't know if you all saw where Mark announces very vulnerably that he's lost almost all of his colleagues that were reporting in Gaza. And by lost, I mean they are killed. They died in their reporting and trying to be courageous for their people. Sharing vulnerably, he's lost all his people. And Joe Budden's transition, not this other guy, I don't know everybody's name, but not this other guy. Joe Budden's transition is like, and Young Thug. Like, just no mention of like, are you okay? Yeah. How do you feel? Who was lost this week? How did they die? Just like nothing. So to Tiff's point around curiosity, if you can't find curiosity, find sympathy. If you can't find sympathy, find empathy. If you can't find empathy, find compassion. Because if you don't, the person who is in a constant state of grief, at some point that grief turns to rage because there's not a safe container for it. So we say on this show, welcome home, and we mean that. Of course, Mark is welcome anytime. I don't know about the rest of them. But I will just say, I don't think that means that we should be foreclosed to having discussions that are tough or where we don't think people are our peers or we're on the same level. I'm not into that. But where I see folks who are constantly unwilling to have conversations that stretch or to have conversations where they at least can appreciate a different perspective, I don't know that I'm into that. So I just want Mark to know I'm praying for you, brother. You know that. And I want better for him. I think that he deserves to hold space with people who are at least more compassionate and more eager to learn from his perspective. And clearly, you can take a Negro out the hood, but you can't take the hood out the Negro. So you might not want to keep leaping at Mark. He might just snap and bust your ass next time. I don't know. I don't want him to do that. But I mean, it was getting Real Housewives to me.
Of course, they're responding as if Mark needs support from some women when these are two men having a conversation. And what's foreign to them and what they don't realize and haven't taken the time to even honor the fact is that men express conversations with each other in a heated fashion sometimes. And maybe they've never seen this. Maybe it intimidated them. But the fact that I saw this interaction with Queen's Flip and Mark and realized it was not going to come to blows after they discussed and tried to have the conversation outside, which hilariously Joe Budden said, you ain't going outside of here. Yeah, I already got enough problems with my neighbors. But I think this is a time where women do not take the time to understand how men relate to each other. And that though the conversation might be heated, though the conversation might come to blows at some point, these two people have respect for each other. And you swooping in here and trying to play mommy over a disagreement on another podcast that you're not a part of is just showing your ignorance of the men of your community. And that's part of the problem. You've placed yourself above these people and you have no respect for their opinions. You have turned your back on the fact that they have actually garnered an audience far larger than yours. So there's obviously some other people that do respect their opinions, that do want to listen to them. And in fact, this is part of the problem I have with Democratic shills, for lack of a better term. They have drowned out the conversation of anybody but a certain elite group that they've selected. And they're not even all that impressive most of the time. These are just talkers. These are people who will take a message from the White House or take a message from the vice presidential residence and repeat it verbatim without any questioning, without anything. So when you have independent voices, when you have an independent platform that is not beholden to any particular branch of the Democratic Party, you have hesitation of even considering their thought. That is a problem with the Democratic Party right now, is that they're not listening to anybody else's opinion. They're not listening to anybody else that could have a better perspective on things and how they could reach more people, especially Black men. And Angela Rye had some similar comments that were awful as well. I will at least give Andrew Gillum and Bakari Sellers a little credit. As the Black men on that show, they did push back and actually explain to Angela and Tiffany how wrong they were, because you are literally trying to silence half of the community and force them to think in the way that you do, and force them to believe in the way that you do. And Tiffany, though you don't have much knowledge of the contributions of a Queen's Flip, I will inform you that Mark sees something different in Queen's Flip that you don't. This is a man, Queen's Flip, who has amassed an audience of over 1 million subscribers on his own, independently of the Joe Budden podcast. That's not an easy feat. And for you to somehow insult his intelligence shows your lack of intelligence. Just because his number of degrees don't match yours in this day and age, there's a separate social intelligence that needs to be accounted for that Queen's Flip possesses. He's done something that you or Mark or Angela may never do, even with your history at MSNBC. A lot of people come to the internet and immediately think that their positions at a cable news network might make them more qualified to excel on YouTube. But this is a totally different skill. And it's something in the attention economy that Queen's Flip has done that is impressive and should be a point of respect. So I think all that goes into this conversation of whether or not he's dumb or he's intelligent. He's obviously intelligent in some ways that you aren't. Angela Rye, Tiffany Cross, and by association, Andrew Gillum and Bakari Sellers. You all represent something. You represent something very familiar. You've been wrong about everything. You've been wrong about Hillary Clinton. You were wrong about Joe Biden. You were wrong about Kamala Harris. You've been wrong. And Mark Lamont Hill has taken a risk by jumping out there and joining the Joe Budden podcast when none of you all were able to offer him an opportunity at an independently Black-owned media outlet. You all claim to respect his intellect, yet you can't see his moves because you all are woefully tone deaf. He's actually trying to reach the audience that you all have alienated. An audience made up of Black men and Black women, by the way. But for some reason, you want to sit on an elitist perch and preach down to them and somehow dictate to people that they are wrong when you have been nothing but wrong politically, out of step and out of touch. You don't get to do that. If you were pro athletes, you'd be fading out into retirement. But unfortunately, the same medium that you have criticized Joe Budden for utilizing and excelling in has given you a last-ditch effort at relevancy. And this is what you choose to do with it, to further divide and further alienate a base of people which you view as beneath you. Well, I'm here to tell you, we've gotten too far in the game to turn back and listen to outdated, useless rhetoric. Instead of trying to dictate what's happening in modern politics, maybe you all should shut up and listen for once. You see what I did there? They told the NBA players to shut up and dribble. I'm telling you to shut up and listen. You claim to be helping the black community, but you do anything but listen to your black men when they're telling you something. Just as you attacked Stephen A. Smith last week for being critical, rightfully so, of Representative Jasmine Crockett. Simply because that's your friend, no other reason. Jasmine Crockett needs to be criticized, pushed in the right direction. Look, don't get me started. Don't get me started. You all have been ostracized in all forms of mainstream media. You're democratic tools, and tools were meant to be broken. So your usefulness is actually got an expiration date. So unless you all start listening to some of these dumb people, unfortunately, you're going to be on a path of obsolescence, on a path of being useless. Because people are going to see what you're talking about. People are going to see how you think about people that think differently than you, and they're going to act accordingly. They're going to ignore you. Don't even get me started on Angela Rye's takes on reparations and how wrong she's been and how she's now co-opting the language of the people she once criticized. But that's for another video. Anyway, let me know what you think about it in the comments. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification for all uploads. Make sure you sign up for the Patreon. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. I don't know why you all make me do this. It's going to be some great stuff over there. Additional content, how to grow on YouTube, and things you can't find on this channel. This is Faucette Media.